Hey friends, it's Doona here again. All right, so today we're going to go over how to do standing splits. All right, so standing splits. Focus on keeping your hips square. So even when you're in a standing position, you could come standing just like this. The hips will be pointing straight forward, right? When you are in a forward fold and you lift one leg, a lot of times what I see in class is, so I'll go ahead and kind of demo it standing up, is you want to bring this right leg back. So you see how the hips are still square, but what I tend to see is this right hip opening. So you see the difference, this right hip is pointing over to the right rather than straight forward, okay? So just keep that in mind, and we're going to go ahead and get started, okay? I'm going to take layer 1 first and kind of move up to the full variation. All right, so coming into a standing position, you could bring your feet together, okay? Then you're going to grab your 2 blocks and place it underneath your hands, okay? So let's bend the knees first. Hinge from the hips, keeping the chest lifted. Back is flat. You're going to stop halfway and grab the blocks and place it directly underneath your shoulders, okay? So the wrists are underneath the shoulders. Feet should be underneath the hips, okay? So layer 1, obviously with the blocks, you could always play around with the different heights of the blocks. So it really depends how open or tight your hamstrings are. Okay. So from here, let's go ahead and start with the right leg lifted first. You're gonna walk this left foot to the middle, okay? And then keeping your spine long, your chest and your torso is parallel to the floor. No arching or no rounding, okay? Finding that neutral, okay? You're gonna, with your right leg, leading with the inner thigh. You're going to lift your right leg up. So let's go ahead and just lift it up halfway, okay? So if you notice, leading with the inner thigh, your hips are going to stay squared, okay? Keep this right foot flexed down a lot. So you're not relaxing the leg. Keep it flexed so that your leg stays active. So you'll notice the moment you flex the foot, your right leg started activating, okay? So now you're always going to put that micro bend in the left knee, especially if you're a hyperextender. You never want to fully lock and hyperextend, okay? Put a micro bend. Keep the chest lifted and focus on pulling the chest forward. Good. Lengthening through the lower back. Now drive your shoulders away from the ears, lengthening through the back of the neck. Gaze is down. You don't want to crunch or you don't want to over round and get lazy. Okay? So that's your upper body. Now, if this is enough for you, should already feel in the left hamstrings, I want you to stay here, okay? Because I'll show you. The moment you try to lift this leg, a lot of times the hips will open. So just kind of like how I showed you standing up, you don't want this right hip to open. Now, a good way to check to see if your hips are squared is I like to gaze back and gaze at the hips. And then notice if that right toes are pointing out. I want you to point the right toes down. That way you know your hips are pretty squared. Okay, but that's not it. Sometimes your toes could point down and your hips, you could drop one hip down. So you don't want to drop that hip either, but you don't want to open the hip either. Okay, so kind of finding that balance. Okay, so if the right hip is open, I want you to focus on rolling the right outer hip down and rolling the right inner thigh up. Good. Gaze back at your toes again. Check in with your pelvis right here, okay? Check in with the pelvis. You'll kind of notice if one is open or one is dumped. Okay, so I want you to look at it. See if it's squared. The right toes are pointing down. Right foot is flexed. Right leg is active. I want you to focus on like you're trying to kick the back wall with that right heel. Okay? And you gotta use a little bit of strength to lift that right hip too. So you're not keeping it dropped. You're lifting. There you go. Good. Pelvis is neutral here. Good. And good way to kind of check in if the pelvis is neutral is placing your hand on the lower back. Good. You'll kind of notice if one is dropping or if one is open too much. All right. Full standing splits. Okay, so you're more than welcome to stay here. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and switch sides. Whew. That's a lot. You're going to feel a lot in the hamstrings, the outer glute area. All right. So now, if you want to take option 2, maybe the full variation of your standing splits, release the blocks. And this time, rather than your torso being parallel, you're going to fold over the leg. Okay, this one gets pretty deep. So I want you to really find that correct alignment if you're going to do this one. Okay, you could try it out. If it doesn't work, I want you to come back to that modified warrior 3 standing splits variation. All right, so coming back to that the standing splits. Okay, so left leg is straight, hips are squared, left toes pointing down, left foot is flexed. From here, always putting that micro bend in the right knee. You're going to walk your hands back to frame your right foot, and you're going to fold over that right leg. Good. So your standing splits. Good. Don't let it open. Don't let it drop. Come back to center. Good. Fold as deep as you can, hinging from the hips, lengthening through the front side of the body. Check in with your left toes. Good. And you could obviously lift it higher, but that's only if the hips are going to stay squared. Good. And then slowly release. That's a really challenging posture. I remember I used to really hate this pose, but once you start to practice more into it, it gets easier, and it's just such a great benefit for not only your hamstrings, but strengthening your hips, your legs. Great for the lower back. All right, try it at home. I'll see you guys next time.